Welcome to the Unlock 360 podcast, where education leaders share how they're turning vision into action, one system, one school, and one student at a time, because strong systems give every learner a better shot at success. And welcome back, everyone, to Unlock 360. I am your host, Wendy Davoud, and joining us today, we have Superintendent Patrick Keeley from Mountain Empire Unified School District in San Diego, California. Welcome, Patrick.
Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you on our show. As we get started here, would you please just share a bit about your journey as an educator that led you to becoming the superintendent?
Sure. I think it's interesting that you get asked that question, and there are some people that were like, I was 10 years old, I wanted to be a teacher and all of that, and then there's others that you kind of fell back to it. And I don't want to say I fell back to it, but I think I tried not to be at first, to be a teacher. I went into school at a high school in broadcast journalism, and then when I was sitting there thinking to myself, I really don't like diagramming all these sentences, because that was that syntax and grammar course. I realized I enjoyed history and things like that, and I had a really wonderful high school experience, and so for that, that kind of led me down that path to getting back into working in schools, and started out my first contracted job. I had a long-term subbing job first, out of student teaching. That subbing job was at a tiny little Catholic school in San Luis Obispo called Mission College Prep, and there was about 180 kids there at the time. And then I got a job at a place called Templeton High School, sandwiched between, on the Central Coast, just about 20 minutes north of San Luis Obispo. Taught there for a few years, and then after my wife and I had our first child, we didn't really have roots on the Central Coast. We love the Central Coast. It's a beautiful area, really wonderful place to live. But, all of, like my family, I've got a large extended family and we're pretty close. And so we wanted to move back into the San Diego area, and wound up getting a job in the Grossmont district, which is a large high school district. And this is kind of one of those things where it's like, you don't know what you don't know, and you don't know things about yourself maybe necessarily that other people might see. And so I got my principal. I was the ASB advisor, and my principal called me into the office, and he's like, hey, there's this program at San Diego State to do your master's and get your admin credential. And he goes, and I've submitted your name to go to the information session. And I'm like, I don't want to be an administrator. I'm like, I don't want to, like, I love working with kids. I like doing all that. And then, he kind of talked me into it. And then, a couple of years later, when I was done with that, he hired me as his vice principal. And then, of course, it's a big district. So after 1 year, they're like, hey, we're going to move you. So I moved to a different school. Some kind of certain things happened, placement of people and such. But within about 3 years, I think I was about 36 years old, and I became a high school principal, which really is relatively young.
Yes, it is.
And quite scary.
Yes.
Just like, you look back at 36 and you're like, oh, it's just a kid. But did that for a few years. And then just a little bit over 10 years ago, the job here in Mountain Empire opened up for the high school principal job. And I am a product of this school, of this high school. I grew up in these mountains, in this rural area, and it was kind of this, I was ready for something different. And it was really just a neat thing. Go back and be the principal of your own high school. And especially a small school, there's only 400 kids in our high school. So go back and get to do that. And then about 5 years later, the superintendent retired. I was named superintendent actually in the middle of COVID. So that was fun. That was a fun.
Oh boy. Yeah.
Going to step into this role. So
right.
journey to get here to
okay.
to get to the superintendent.
there's so many things that you just shared that we have in common, or at least, similarity around from, a kind of a crooked path or a different path to becoming an educator to, um, what you shared about, having a large extended family and being really close. And, um, I just actually interviewed a superintendent from a very rural area here in Texas last week. And, having mentioned that makes me want to ask about what it's like. What are some of the challenges or opportunities of being a superintendent in rural California?
Well, I like how you frame that, challenges and opportunities, because it comes with both, right?
Right?
And there's a lot of times, sometimes I don't think people see the opportunity all the time. And because the job itself of a superintendent, is to solve problems and to set vision and do those things. But not necessarily do people pause and go, this is an opportunity to really take a look at something, right? I
Hmm.
mean, from a challenging standpoint, there's strong inequities built into the system, for like in terms of funding models. California, for example, is one of the few states left that does ADA funding. Well, we're a 660 square mile area. Now, we're located in San Diego County, but we take up 15% of the entire area of San Diego County, just our school district.
Wow.
And, so transportation's a big deal for us. And it's about 7.5% of our budget, when most of the other school districts in the county are, between 2 and 3.5% at the top end. And here we are,
Wow.
7.5%, because we put 5,000 miles a week onto our vehicles. Um, and then, so you have that challenge of transportation, and then you have this challenge of, different weather patterns and things like that. Like, being so spread out, we have like multiple climate zones up here.
Yeah.
And so then on a rainy day, you still have school, but people might not send their kids out, or kids might not want to go wait at a bus stop in the rain or in the cold or in the wind or in the snow. And so, certain things happen, and you wind up with, maybe a higher absentee rate. And when the funding is tied to that, and then you have this, widespread rural area that already is under resourced, and then you have funding challenges based on your attendance. Uh, it's these rules that get made, and these
Mhm.
things are not necessarily context based; they're based on the masses. And
Mhm.
so you have that challenge. You have challenges in terms of, I have two schools right now that are struggling with potable water issues, and
Okay.
and you're like sitting here on one end, just trying to solve that problem today. But then
Mhm.
also have, when you talk about opportunity, I have an opportunity to also raise awareness. So for tomorrow, for example, I'm going to meet with about 14 other superintendents from the state who all have drinking water issues. And we're going to raise that issue and raise that profile, because there is no way that in this country of wealth,
Mm.
children should not have potable water at their school. And it shouldn't take years of bureaucratic red tape to get through to make sure that that is happening for our children. And so I look at it as, I have an opportunity not only to fix it now and do something now, but maybe to use my voice as a superintendent, especially from a rural area, um, to bring awareness to an issue. And maybe even for those of us who have to run our own water systems and are on well water, so that maybe we get a better apportionment, we get a separate apportionment to make sure that our wells stay, in good repair, and that we meet our testing requirements and all of those things. And so, that's kind of, one of those ways to address certain things.
Yeah, I'm curious. So are you saying that one, I guess, workaround or kind of band-aid that you have in place are wells to ensure that kids do get water? Or what are you doing about it? Like, how do you deal with
We
it?
have a portion of our district is on a community water system. right? A couple of our school sites. The rest of our school sites all have wells.
Okay.
So we're all on well water. Well, when a well, then you have to pay for, again, these are some of these things, like I have to pay for water testing, right? So if something comes back with high nitrates, for example, you can't use that water. So then we have to truck in water. And so for one of the schools, it's been going on for 8 or 9 years. And then you get in this cycle with the state where you're trying to get the well repaired. And, it's just this kind of almost doom cycle of bureaucracy. And then,
Yeah.
so it's like you have the well, they work, the water table up here is fine up here in the mountains. It's not like there's not water under here, but it's about like, how do you pull that out and everything else? And so if you're a city, a place in the city, you're going to be on a community water system, right? So if they have an issue with the water, usually that community water system, whatever water company it is, it's theirs to fix. It's not going to be the burden of the school district, right?
Yeah.
Rural school districts who are on wells, we are water operators, right? So I have to have that expertise and try to build expertise within my limited staff. And so these are like, there's just different issues that, that's, I always think about the job is different for everybody.
Mm-hmm.
So part of my job is to really understand some of these other types of issues, which sometimes, you have to pay attention to a lot of things in this role, right?
Yeah.
But when I'm having to take care of something so basic as drinking water and what's my workaround. So you have a workaround, which is getting water trucked in, but then you have to have your maintenance guys go deliver all the water, because the water, like Culligan, they're not trucking water to the school sites. They're just dropping it here at the district. And so then I have to use my maintenance guys to carry that out. So it's all those kind of things. So there's that logistical issue. And so, that's a challenge. It's a challenge that we've been addressing. That's why I say there's that opportunity for something bigger, to raise awareness at a much larger level, to maybe fix it for not just my district, but to help other districts across the state address this issue.
Yeah, sure. You're reminding me, in my mind, I just keep hearing my 8th grade algebra teacher, Mr. Nichols, say, equity doesn't mean the same. And I think what you're bringing up makes me think of, the same funding formula is applied to different districts, but that may not necessarily meet their needs based on some of those challenges that you've shared.
Like you talk about funding models. So during COVID, for example, you had the funding model based from the federal government based on the Title I formula. And part of that formula is taken into account population density, is my opinion. So in that formula, we got about a third per student of ESSER money than LA Unified.
Wow.
And so then you start to look at, well, what kind of large school district? And I just throw out LA Unified because everyone's going to know that. It's what's largest in the world or in the country or whatever. But, when you have this large district, any of the large districts, and then they can buy something and they need to buy things, they can buy at a much higher volume, right? So their price point, not only are they going to get more of that ESSER funding, did they get more, but their price point for the items that they wanted to buy were less, right? So for me, as a small school district,
right,
and I needed to buy hand sanitizers, for example, I only need 250 of those hand sanitizers.
Yeah.
So then it's like, you're faced with competing against these giant, corporate type entities. And you're saying, I just need 250 of these things so I can get my school's open, right? And then you get a giant school district going, well, I need 25,000 of them. And if you're the vendor, who are you going to choose, right? You're going to choose who's going to make you the most money because you're a business, right? So it takes longer to get things. So there's all those kind of things that are unique to smalls and rurals that are maybe different. And I don't mean that to say, that some other school district is bad or anything. It's not. It has a lot more to do with just that there are certain things, and you talk forever about underserved rural communities, but um, and on multiple levels, not just in school, right? Like
Mhm.
on multiple levels, what the challenges that people might have in these areas, but it's like, and there's not a huge voting base. So when you talk about the political system, they're not going to cater that much to the rural areas because there's not that many votes for them. And so, that's problematic. At the same time, without our rural areas, we'd all be starving.
This is super insightful. I really appreciate you sharing this. Our show is about unlocking 360 degrees, really thinking all around in all directions and ways about leadership, teaching, and learning. And, I think that with my lane being more so around systems for instructional leadership and developing instructional leadership capacity, sustaining results for kids, that's a piece of your job that, I don't necessarily know so much about or hear as much about. And I think that our listeners will appreciate that as well. It's very eye-opening.
Yeah, it's like I said, it's an interesting thing. The superintendent job. People ask, well, what does a superintendent do? And and um, I
I'm laughing because I'm just thinking,
why
what does the superintendent not do?
I'm always like, it's like the strangest job I've ever had. It's a great job. Like, don't get me wrong. It's, for me, like with ADD, it's perfect because it's like, I can talk to you today about this. And then, in the next hour, I'm going to go walk over to the high school and look at some facilities challenge. And then tonight I got
Yeah.
some event to talk to contractors about construction. And it's like multiple things all in a day. When it really comes down to it, the superintendent is the CEO, right? That's the
Mhm.
CEO of the district, and so my job is to see all of those things. And when you talk about systems, and I took this role, having worked in the district for 5 years prior, and I had the opportunity to watch and look at some of the things I thought could be better from a different lens, right?
Sure.
And so, not that I was even strategizing about becoming the superintendent. You know, I was very happy as a high school principal. I loved being a high school principal. It's a really wonderful job, but at the same time, I knew there was things we could do differently. And one of those things was to how do we remake the school system? And even where the work gets done, how do we our operational side and our leadership
Mhm.
side in order to better utilize or better position the district for longer term success. It seems, especially in a rural area, I think in my time in the district, we have been an evacuation center 3 or 4 times for wildfires, right? So
Okay.
you got to switch gears all the time, right? And we
Mhm.
have literal fires, and then we have the figurative fires, and it seems like you're always in this space of dealing with a challenge.
Mhm.
That's fine, and you got to do that. And I have amazing people that work here that are flexible, and when something goes down, when something needs to happen, people drop what they're doing and they help their community and things. And I think of like this one time where we were an evacuation center, and it was a pretty big emergency right away, and it was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon and 5 o'clock when the people were just being dropped off here, and I had about 8 people left, um, and everybody stopped what
Wow.
they were doing, and we all just set people up, fed them cafeteria food till we can get the Red Cross here, and
Uh-huh.
do that here, and it's a really beautiful thing. But at the same time, again, challenge that, like, how you have these things happen, but what's the opportunity? What opportunity exists in this role, and how can I better position the district to not have every crisis feel like it's going to stop everything?
Right.
That was kind of you know when I think of how I could restructure it and reposition people's created an ed services department. We didn't have that before
Okay.
in a small. So a lot of the smalls don't have that. We didn't have a real HR department, so it was all landing on my desk. And so it's like, how can this district ever move if the superintendent is so deeply in the weeds?
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell the story about our water. I can't move us through the state bureaucracy to get design funding to rebuild a high school if I'm also having to lead every curriculum
Right.
and do every HR thing and all of those things. You can't do that in these roles.
No, you can't. That would be too much to do well. That's for certain.
Well, and that's where if you don't have those systems built, which we did not, you won't be able to move the dial consistently. And I tell this story all
Oh,
the time. When I was at the high school, there was this group of young women who they were really all very driven, and they were close friends. And again, small town, little schools, so they'd all been together since they were little
yeah.
girls, right? But they pushed each other, and they pushed each other in a friendly, nice way, but they pushed each other, and they graduated. They all graduated, all went to UCs, all got through UC schools in 4 years. One of them is now teaching for us. uh, but I tell the story because it wasn't by design, and I share that with our staff. Like, that wasn't, these girls became successful not by our design, not by our
Mhm.
intentionality. And that's where you start to think about, how do you move the district to where it is intentional and there's
Right.
design for that, and that you are doing that work to make it so there's more kids like that have those opportunities, because your system is designed for that. And so that's where shifting all of that work around in our district has been starting to show some signs of positive change.
That's great. Now you're making me think of your North Star. So, what is your district's current North Star in terms of success for kids, and how do you align school sites and teams around that?
Well, being spread across 660 square miles, and all of our we have 4 elementary schools, and they're all about a half-hour drive apart. So
Okay.
get the elementary teams together, for example. And again, having that opportunity in my previous role at the high school got everybody, right? They got all the kids from the community. So I could see who is coming from where, and you could almost point out, oh, this kid came from this community or this school, based on certain academic things and what have you. So it really became, and I'd sit there as the only high school in the district, and I'd sit in the meetings and I'd listen to the elementary principals talk. And this one had this budget, so they were buying this supplemental curriculum, and this one was buying,
Mm,
this one didn't know what they wanted to do. And there was no aligned instructional system at all.
okay.
And so when you start to think about that, you go, we need a longer term vision for this district. We need an aligned instructional system to make things work a little bit better. And so the first thing was to get through the mess that was COVID, right? So
Mm-hmm.
once we got through that, you know, I don't even know what you call COVID anymore, but that terrible couple of years, where the rules changed every day and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And once we were really back in school, uh, we had we worked with the county office of ed. Um, we had reached out because I now had my ed services person, and she and I started to talk about how do we move the dial. And I happened to see another superintendent from somewhere else in the state present something about how they set their vision and things like that. And it was from an agricultural community and a semi-rural kind of a feel. And there were certain things that resonated with me about their story and the
Okay.
success that they had. And so we started talking. We contacted the county office of ed, and they helped us and led us through the portrait of a graduate process. Where
Okay.
we, um, we designed that long-term uh, vision. And really, it is that North Star. It's that moonshot kind of a thing. What are you in 15 years? You know, right now we have 3-year-olds in our school system, and really still the early parts of AI, right? So what is our
Mhm.
school system in 15 years for these 3-year-olds? We can't from that perspective predict what they're going to see in 15 years.
So I am curious about the elements or the components, the skills and behaviors or the unique attributes that you all developed for your portrait of the graduate. I'm sure those watching are curious as well. Can you share some of that with
Yeah.
us?
So from a process standpoint, there's a bit of community engagement and staff engagement and student engagement as well, to develop that. And between all of the interviews and the surveys and the all day events on Saturdays, we got about 76,000 data points to build from.
Wow.
So
Okay.
that's from a small school district. So if you could imagine a large school district,
Mm-hmm.
um, it would be much more data to sift through. But, really kind of came down to, community and cultural awareness, flexible, adaptable, future ready, uh, you know, all of those types of areas that really, if you think about those things, I mean, those are relationship success kind of things, right? You need those things in your toolkit to be successful. You can have a lot of academic chops, and if you don't know how to navigate the world, in a rapidly changing,
Yeah.
if you can't adapt and you can't be flexible and you can't pivot, you can't do certain things, doesn't matter what you know.
Right.
And that's on a multitude of levels. And really what I see it as, um, I was asked this, I'm sure you were asked this. I when I've talked with groups of people before, I asked the question, were you asked what you wanted to be when you grow up? And everybody will raise their hand. But if you ask people, who do you want to be?
Mm.
Right. And I would
Yeah.
pose the question, argue, however you want to say it, that if we thought about who we wanted to be a little bit more, would we have better success in our relationships, both at work, with family, what have you? Would we be able to weather difficult times in a different way? When I go back to the, running an evacuation center,
Mm-hmm.
those 8 people that stayed immediately, it wasn't because of what they did for me. It wasn't because
Right.
it was my assistant or my, ASB finance person or campus supervisor. It wasn't any of that. It was who they were as people. And so when you really think about, addressing those things and uh, creating that baseline, and then really then looking at how are you teaching these skills and in what areas, like
Mm-hmm.
a book of that. But there are certain things that you could start to mold into your school system to tease some of those things out. Um, but we also wrote at the same time a portrait of an adult
You did. Okay.
and a systems portrait.
Okay.
So, the portrait of adult is, who are the adults that we need in our system to support these kids and to build this. And then the system is, well, if we want these type of adults and we want these things to be true for the kids, in what ways does our system need to change?
Mm-hmm.
And so that was our first piece between 22 and 23, into the first part of 2024. But then there was developing from there on the systems portrait, there was developing our 5-year strategic plan.
Okay.
And that is not the entire systems portrait. We just picked out a few areas to work on, because really, and I go back to what, right now, the kids who are seniors in high school were born when the iPhone was first coming out.
Isn't it crazy?
It is crazy. And
It's
you think
crazy.
about how that has changed everything for us, and
Mm-hmm.
how smartphones and access to information every 2 minutes of your life has changed. And, did our school systems change with it?
Mm-hmm.
So what are we preparing them for? The jobs aren't even going to exist. The jobs
Right.
that our 3-year-olds in our preschools right now, the jobs that many of them are going to go for don't exist. But it will, flexibility, compassion, community awareness, adaptability, being future focused, being present, being all those things. That is going to exist. And so when you really think about just the, what's our role? Yes, we do need to teach skills and we need to teach
Mm-hmm.
certain things, but we also need to teach this other piece. And so the other piece that we've implemented as part of that, and it was one of the 5 parts of our strategic plan, was an aligned social emotional program, which didn't exist either. So
Okay.
over the course of the last little over 5 years in my role here, it has really been about trying to align the social emotional piece, align curriculum and instruction, and then also keep us focused on that longer term vision of things, which also includes, facilities and
Mm-hmm.
where I spend a fair amount of it, because all of our facilities are in need of deep repairs. So we're navigating the, challenges with getting the funding and things like that.
Yeah.
So
I'm curious about those, what practices for social and emotional learning and academics, um, what are those sort of non-negotiables or tier one practices that your district is really trying to embrace across school sites and implement?
well, just in general, and I'm not a micromanager, and I'm the superintendent. You will do what I say all the time kind of thing.
Yeah.
But I did kind of let people know it was non-negotiable that we will on Wednesdays, we'll be doing our social emotional curriculum across the board as a district.
Okay.
Just so there's a time that we all know that that's going to get built into our schedules, and so the kids will know that that's happening on those days, and things like that. So just one basic practice, but again, I don't dictate what goes on everywhere and everybody's schedules and things like that. That would drive me nuts, and it would drive them nuts, right? People need to be professionals and be treated as such. But from the curriculum and instruction side,
Mm-hmm.
put a lot of energy in, and when we had money, even more so, into developing literacy, standards or literacy instruction across the district, especially
Definitely.
early literacy. The hard part is the yo-yo of funding that happens,
I
where
know.
you go and you say, hey, let's start a reading program and let's get a literacy specialist, and let's do that, um, and then that funding dries up and there's not much you can do. So we did use a bit of that in that way, but it was also to really push some training, and
Okay.
on people. So now we've kind of morphed it into one district literacy specialist, and a big part of her role is on that PD side.
Okay.
So and to make sure that people are learning along the way. Being a large, vast rural area, we have more probably teacher turnover than we want. Yeah.
Yeah.
So having to
Well,
rebuild that all the time is challenging.
yeah, indeed. And I am also thinking about that collective teacher efficacy and tapping into, I'm curious how you all as a district and your school sites, how do you tap into the resources that you do have at the moment, at any given moment, by way of human resources that do have knowledge and skills and that are professionals? What collaborative practices or structures do you have in place for teachers to learn and grow from one another?
We do have some built-in collaboration time. In every Wednesday is a late start, and teachers are able to get together, and then we also from time to time have, for example, with our 6 to 12 ELA, we've started a committee with them where they're getting together and they've been kind of lining up that curriculum as well. So
Okay.
the hard part for us is really distance, and then also uh, getting enough subs for PD time. um,
Yeah.
as well. So, but we do have some practices in place, but I think that that's something that could get stronger. I think we've kind of had to rethink a little of that without the literacy TOSAs on the campuses, because um, they were meeting on a regular cadence to discuss the program.
Okay.
And then on the other side of it, with our extended learning and our summer learning, those teachers meet regularly to plan that work and to plan that program as well.
Okay. Now, you mentioned literacy TOSAs. Are they no longer on the campuses due to funding and budget
Yeah,
constraints?
as a budgetary constraints. So we have one district literacy TOSA.
Oh, great.
She is kind of helping coordinate that, and there's, I mean, I think it was helpful on one end because some kids got stronger or smaller groups, stronger instruction, or more individualized instruction.
Mm-hmm.
On the other end, sometimes that can create that's the literacy person, go to them.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's a really challenging space, and building the capacity of all of our teachers, I think is really the next step. And
Mm-hmm.
solid training in the curriculum and in methodology and things like that. I think district wide is probably a little bit better. I wish I could have two people to do the training. If I could have
Yeah.
two and just divide up the two schools, I think that would be helpful. Um, I think it's hard to get one person to be that one person for
Split.
schools.
Yeah. Yeah. Now you do have quite a few for one person. Yeah. Well, Patrick, it has been a pleasure having you on today. Is there anything else you'd like to share about your district that we haven't touched on before we wrap up?
I give tours all the time. So
Okay.
people want to know about my district. I say, hey, why don't you come out? I'll drive you around. And a lot of people take me up on it. Locally, whether it's a county office or I recently took someone who's running for state superintendent around our district.
Nice.
So I like to tell our story and show people that there's a lot of different ways that people have to teach and learn and work within our school systems.
Good. I bet hopefully you'll have some interested folks reaching out to you. And where would someone go if they want to learn more about your district?
Our website is musd.org, www.musd.org.
Okay, thank you. Now I have to say one last thing. So I've been thinking of a fun way to end the show
Uh-huh.
and trying well, I guess I've only tried one other thing. But I had another new idea. So this past weekend, my family and I went to the lake for just like a family getaway. And, we had been playing a bunch of games and having a good time and fishing and doing different things. But I think we were a little bit like, okay, we need a change of pace. And I thought, you know what? I'm going to let's just have a conversation starter. So I said, okay, let's do this. Before we start playing games again, let's just go around and share like I'm grateful for, because I like that practicing gratitude. So it could be anything, Patrick. It could be personal or professional. What are you grateful for and why?
I'm grateful for my family, because I it's really kind of a core of who I am, and
Yeah.
I'm and let me just preface this with I'm a very lucky person. I'm
Mm.
My wife and I have been married for almost 30 years. My kids are, flourishing in young adulthood. It's really, a beautiful thing. Um, but whatever your family is, whether it's your family or your chosen family or a mix of both, be about them, be about them
Yeah.
and keep that square. And if you're square there, if you got those things going well in your life, the other things, like I share with people all the time. The stress I have in my life is work stress. And then it kind of ends there. I don't have a lot of stresses outside. And so that's what
That's
I'm grateful
good.
for. I'm grateful for a close family and it's everything. So
I love that. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And for those watching, thank you so much for tuning in again today. If you would like to learn more, you know where to find us. Take care. Thank you for listening to the Unlock 360 podcast. Follow us on LinkedIn and YouTube, and visit leadteachlearn360.com to learn more about us, because every school deserves systems that work and leaders who can make them thrive.